It's early evening, and we're in rush hour traffic on the streets of Nairobi, Kenya's capital city. Nairobi was founded in 1899 by British colonial authorities as a depot on a railway line headed all the way to neighboring Uganda. In those days, the little, thinly populated town had 3 racially segregated areas, distinguishable by changes in landscape. High and leafy westlands for Europeans, middle ground parklands for South Asians, and low and dry Eastlands for Africans. Our crew is making its way first to the central railway station and then onward for a tour by night of the Eastlands of today, in the time of a worldwide pandemic. Our first special guest and guide will be Joe Aketch, a former mayor of Nairobi who was born and bred in Eastlands. And now we are sitting comfortably in the carriage of a brand new commuter train introduced to ease congestion in the city. We have got off at the first station for a switch in transport. We are going to get onto a matatu, the favoured means of public transport for the masses. So, Mayor Joe, we're on our way. I was wondering whether you come here very often, ever since you were a kid. You were born here in Eastlands. Do you still come?
Yes, I come very often, and I cannot leave my roots.
You gravitated towards politics, obviously, as an adult, but in your youth, I think there's something in your profile that talks to sport, to boxing. Tell us about where this was happening, how you were drawn into it.
When you're living in these areas, you have to be tough, because you have the young people, the youth from Ziwani, definitely will have a problem with the youth of Majengo, for instance. And this was purely because of maybe our girls will go to the other side and the girls will come on the other side. So for you to survive, you really have to learn self-defense. And I went for boxing, and I did my last boxing at the age of 52. I fought against a British political attaché called Tom Fletcher. And I told him I was going to go home on the stretcher.
Like Muhammad Ali, stick like a bee, float like a butterfly.
But at the age of 52, it was me more or less going down on the stretcher.
The places where you did your sport, surely we talk about social halls, the trade union movement, founding fathers like Tom Mboya. Can you name drop a bit? How many names can you drop that take us to Eastlands?
When we were young, I was born and brought up in Ziwani, and Ziwani was more or less the political center in terms of the people coming to live. And one of them was Tom Mboya, who lived in Ziwani, and Tom Mboya was behind fighting for independence and also for the trade union. And if you remember, Tom Mboya was the one behind having the Kenyans
the airlift.
Yeah, and in the airlift
to the United States.
And then of course we had Obama's father, of course, would come
Barack Obama Senior.
Obama's father would come, they would see him. And
so basically the first generation of civil servants, functionaries as they might be called in some languages, they were the educated Africans started off in Eastlands.
Exactly.
Can I draw you on the performing arts, music, theatre? Is this a hub of creative activity, and what names can you tell the young operated from here, within here?
Well, we have some of the famous musicians of the world standard. And one of them, of course, is Zenze, for instance.
John Zenze.
John Zenze, who used to play rumba.
Yes.
And twist.
And the twist.
But then we have people like the one who who sang the Malaika Point.
Fadili
Fadili Williams, of course, I was behind sending Fadili Williams to America when I joined Pan American Airways.
I'm going to introduce onto our trip two young people. One is a young single mother confronting our COVID times, and the other is a well-known hip-hop rapping poet. And I want them to tell you about their lives. So let's see whether we can get them onto the matatu.
Molly, karibu.
Asante. Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, hi Molly, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Mzuri sana. Nice to see you.
You too.
Molly, have you ever heard about the mayor before?
No.
Joe Aketch, former. Well, you must have been very young. Welcome to Sana.
I guess.
Generations meet. So tell us about yourself.
I'm a mother of two kids.
Uh-huh.
I live in Madare.
Very good.
Na mimi ni hairdresser.
Oh, you're a hairdresser?
Yes.
Wow. Basi unasaidia sana utamtoa kule, eh?
Nawasaidia na COVID. Wananishukuru.
Were you born in Madare?
I was born here in Nairobi.
Oh, where in Nairobi?
Pumwani.
Me too, I was in Pumwani.
Okay.
Is there a support system within these times of COVID?
Yeah, kuna support noma sana. COVID haina bahati. Lazima idedi.
Asante sana. Yeah.
Umoja ni nguvu. Mimi nashukuru watu wanapendana kwa hii nchi.
Very good. Excellent.
Mayor Joe, next up for you is for his younger generation a very famous poet called Teardrops. The throne is yours.
I'm taking over the throne now.
So, Mayor, have you heard of Teardrops?
No, I've not heard of Teardrops.
Teardrops, have you heard of the mayor?
Honestly, yes. And I'm more than humble, first of all, to meet you. And,
Thank you.
You've just won this award. Tell us about
This is
it.
good.
Okay, so this award is for Activism Challenge. Today I was the second runners-up, and I'm so happy because a lot of poets are going to gain from this, not only myself. Yeah.
Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you so much,
So,
sir.
what is your relationship to Eastlands? I know you have one. That's why you're here.
Yes, Eastland made me. Eastland made me.
Where were you born?
I was born here in Nairobi, Makongeni. My mom passed away, so I had to go and live with my grandmother somewhere in South Nyanza. And then after some point I came back to Nairobi and I used to live with my sister, and then I had to go back to school to teach myself how to write and to read a lot of old books. So I was in Korogosho. So I used to live in Korogosho Library.
Have you ever written specifically about Eastlands?
I write about Eastlands because Eastlands is the depth of my heart. And
all the time?
Most of the time when I write, my audience is for Eastlands. Because a lot of people write in, poems in English, but if you want to perform, people like in Eastlands, they love the metaphors, the humor that they can't relate to, and that's why I decided to write in Shem.
What are you expressing? What's the name of the poem?
The poem is called Street Philosophy because all the philosophies that I have of loving each other and respecting each other, as much as I grew up in a street whereby there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of sorts of things, but I learned a lot from that. That is my philosophy. I've learned to live that where you live with a neighbor. When there's curfew like this time and you want to cook and you don't have a matchbox, you have to live better with your neighbor. That's right. So that's what I've learned. I've learned things that Harvard University will never teach you, and that is this.
Right, well, we want to hear it.
All right, so
we want to hear it. 3, 2, 1.
So let's make a toast. I'm the toaster. Sisemi ni mikate because that's how you are bred. Niambeni raha gani niko Mombasa, mimi starehe gani niko starehe, niko na wadotas wakigraduate into prostitutes, sama niko na wasons wana grow up wakijobeba maguns. Nimekuwa kwa mtaa yenye either utaachwa kwa mataa ama uchiu blackout. Nimekuwa kwa mtaa yenye meraise ma king, ma leader, ma revolutionary. Waambieni mimi ni cocktail molecule na atoms. Waambieni mimi ni crossbreed ya Mother Teresa na Mahatma Gandhi. Waambieni nimekuwa kwa mtaa yenye imejenga mastaa kina Lupita. So mtaa hata stardom ikitubaia hama, Eastlando tutawahi hama, because tuko hapa kubadilisha gunpowers into rose flowers. Tuko hapa kuchange vitu, and that's why tuko hapa. Eastlando ndio baba na Eastlando ndio bado mama.
Well, I think we give him a clap. We give him a clap. We've given us enough hope to keep us going for the whole of 2021. It's time to get off the matatu. The curfew beckons and we all have to go home. You must have been fascinated by our ride and brought closer to our world.